Good evening and welcome to those councillors attending this evening's Cabinet meeting and those members of the public watching or listening to our live stream. My name is Councillor David Tutt and I'm leader of Eastbourne Borough Council. In a moment I'm going to ask my Cabinet colleagues to introduce themselves and to state their particular roles. When introducing themselves, could I ask councillors please to confirm whether they need to declare any interest in any item on the agenda. And just to kick that off, I'm going to I need to say that on item 9, which is the General Fund budget of 2021-22, as I'm a director of Aspiration Homes, I will be declaring a personal and potentially prejudicial interest in that because it's mentioned. And so I'm going to take that item away from the rest of the discussion on the budget. I'm going to ask Councillor Steve Holt, my deputy, to chair that element of the meeting, and I will leave the room and ask somebody to send me a text when any debate and the vote on that element of the budget is complete. And so now I'll move round to my colleagues, please. Steve, would you like to start off?
Yes, good evening, everybody. My name's Councillor Steve Holt. I am the Deputy Leader of Eastbourne Borough Council and I am also the Cabinet Portfolio Holder for Finance and Audit, as well as Devonshire Ward Councillor. Thank you, Steve. Margaret.
Hi, I'm Councillor Margaret Bannister. I'm also a Devonshire Ward Councillor. I'm Cabinet Portfolio Holder for Tourism and Enterprise. I would like to declare a personal but non-prejudicial interest in item 13, the waste collection service, because I live within the blue area of the town centre that is looking to maintain a weekly service.
Thank you. Becky.
I am Rebecca Whippy, Councillor Rebecca Whippy, and my portfolio is Disability, Equality and Fairness, Community Safety, LGBTQ, and I'm a St Anthony's Ward Councillor.
Thank you, Becky. Alan.
Thank you. I'm Councillor Alan Shotworth. I'm a councillor for Langley Ward. My portfolio on the Cabinet is for Direct Assistance Services, and the largest area with that is housing. Can I also, like you, Chair, declare a personal and possibly prejudicial interest on item number 9 to do with the General Fund revenue budget and capital programme, in particular just about the item that you referred to, because I'm also a Director of Aspiration Homes. Therefore, I will withdraw from the meeting like you at that point and take no part in that particular aspect of that debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. John.
Thank you. I'm Jonathan Dow. I'm a councillor in Old Town Ward and I'm lead member for climate change with the Eastbourne Borough Council.
Thank you. And Colin.
I'm Councillor Colin Swansborough. I'm a Hampden Park councillor and I am the lead member for Place Services and Special Projects. And I have no declarable interests this evening.
Thank you. Can I ask everyone to mute their microphones when they're not speaking? If you have any connectivity issues, you may find it helpful to turn off the camera when you're not speaking. If anyone has technical difficulties during the course of the meeting, please can they phone the number 415023 for technical support. Please can all councillors, officers and participants clearly state their name each time that they speak so that it's clear to members of the public who are listening just exactly who is speaking. And can I ask you also to indicate when you finish speaking so that we can then move on to the next part of the agenda. Thank you. So the first item on our agenda this evening are the minutes of the meeting which we held on the 2nd of December 2020. Is it your wish that I to sign those as a true and correct record? At least I'll do it electronically at the moment and physically when I'm next able to do so. If it is your desire that I so do.
Agreed.
Agree.
Thank you. Second item is apologies for absence. We're all here, so there are none. Third item are declarations of interest, and we've covered those already. Item 4, questions by members of the public. Simon, could I just ask you whether you've received any questions from members of the public, please?
Thank you, Chair. Simon Russell, Head of Democratic Services. I confirm we've had no requests from members of the public to speak at tonight's meeting.
Thank you. And could I ask if there have been any urgent items that need to be raised at the meeting this evening?
I've received no urgent items to raise at tonight's meeting.
And could I also ask Simon, whilst you're speaking, whether there have been any requests from other councillors to address our meeting this evening?
Thank you, Chair. I've received no notification from visiting members to address tonight's Cabinet meeting.
Thank you. So we can move to the next item on the agenda, which is the Recovery and Reset Programme. I'm pleased to say that the Recovery and Reset Programme, which covers both Eastbourne and Lewes councils and has representation on a cross-party basis, has been meeting, and that work is well underway now in terms of reshaping exercises and looking at 3 pillars: reshaping delivery, digital transformation, and the assets of the councils. Work is underway on each of those pillars, and updates on the progress will be reported as we go throughout the financial year. Just to explain, we'll be picking this up in the budget as well, but we've currently identified savings for 2021 of £850,000, and then in each year after that 2.5 million. So that programme is already well underway and will be delivering substantial benefits to meet the financial challenges we have going ahead. Could I ask if there are any questions with regard to that report? There being none, the recommendations are that the Recovery and Reset Programme provides a structured and accountable approach for delivering. The recommendations is to note the progress made with the Recovery and Reset Programme. Can I ask for your approval to that recommendation, please?
Agreed.
Thank
Agreed.
you. We now move to the corporate performance for Q3. This is split into 2 parts. The first part looks at the progress on our performance against service delivery targets. The second looks at the financial performance of the council. And so I'm going to take it in those 2 parts and ask Steve if he would introduce, if I could ask John, or even try again. It's been a busy day. I'll ask John, but he won't know.
Ask John.
He can make it up. And I'll ask Colin if he would introduce the performance part of that for us, please. Thank you, Colin.
Thank you very much. Colin Swansborough, lead member for Place Services. Some interesting items on the performance. Percentage of business rates collected during the year is up at 98.25% of the target. Average days to process new claims for housing benefit, that's on target as well. And average days to process changes of circumstances, that's on good target as well. Interesting thing about that, of course, that doesn't happen by accident. Lots and lots of people are working very, very hard to achieve those results, and we all ought to thank them for their efforts. If I take you down to the next page, page 21, number 9, this I found this one quite interesting, but I'm not so sure about everybody else. But the number of people registering for our email service, if you look in the 4th column, it is 32,996 people. Now, obviously, that they didn't all register in the last quarter. That's an accumulation that's been loaded onto a computer at a certain time. But it is interesting to note that we now have that way of contacting and being contacted by over 32,000 people, and that helps us enormously in our dealings with the public and the public's dealing with us. So I'm very, very pleased with that. There's a couple of red items. One of them, I just mentioned the last one, fly tipping incidents are up, and not sure really how we can cope with those, because the people who do them are quite reprehensible, and we do what we can with them. And we find 3 people each £75. I'm not sure if that's enough. But anyway, we'll see how we go along with that. Any questions, please?
Questions for Colin? Alan's first.
Thank you. Councillor Alan Shuttleworth. Yeah, not so much a question, but a comment on the page which covers off the monitoring of the work on benefits and housing benefits in particular, and the fact that given the enormous increase in workload in that area, and the fact that there have been so many new claims and so many changes in circumstances, it's nothing short of remarkable, I think, that the staff have managed to keep on top of that and are ahead of target in those areas, which I think is a real testament to the work of those people who are working in that area. And again, on item 7, which deals with the number of households living in emergency accommodation, again, the enormous amount of work that's been going on in helping people to stay in their accommodation, an enormous amount of preventative work, so that those people who are presenting to the council and needing to go into emergency accommodation, that has also been kept under control. In fact, there's been a significant improvement there, and despite the massive increase in demand, we've managed to reduce the number of households in emergency accommodation. So again, a real tribute to those people who are working in that area. Thank you.
Thank you. John. You're muted, John. Sorry.
It was just to come back on the fly tipping, really, just to reassure you that there's lots of work going on behind the scenes to reduce that and to ensure that we not only trace the people that are doing it, but enforce where absolutely we can. So just to reassure you, Colin, that is conversations that are definitely going to be going on, and we'll look to do more on that as time goes on.
Thank you, John. Alan drew attention to some of the housing stats there, but there are other targets which have been hit or exceeded. You've the targets around planning, the targets around our waste collection, and absolutely stunning performance by our waste collection service, who have been out there in all weathers throughout the COVID pandemic. And indeed, the staff attendance, when you think that we have been through a year of lockdowns and people having to take time off due to potential COVID infection, if not actual COVID infections, on top of other illnesses and issues, to have that average staff days lost as low as it is and within the targeted area is something that we really must thank our staff for the amount of effort they put in and their dedication to the work that they do. Becky, did your hand go up and then go down again? I wasn't certain.
Oh, sorry. It did, but I thought it was up, but that's fine. I mean, it's all been said. I'm just incredibly proud of our staff. I expected to see this full of red, little red figures saying that we were behind on everything. And, you know, it's only the hard work of our officers that has done this. And to echo what Alan says, quite often in my day job, I get quite a lot of casework for disabled people. And Alan knows that because I badger him about it. But if anything, I've actually seen less. I've seen less of that. So there's somebody working very hard somewhere, and I'm very proud of our staff for dealing with everything they have done in the pandemic in such a noble and efficient way. I just think they're incredible.
Thank you very much, Becky. Unless there are any other comments on that part of the report, I'm going to move on to the financial performance, and I'll see if I can get it right this time and invite Steve to introduce that to us.
Yes, good evening once again. Councillor Stephen Holt, Finance Cabinet Member. So yes, the items in item 8B are very much similar to sort of stuff that we're discussing later on this evening. So I don't want to dwell on it too much. as it's all covered later, certainly as part of the budget, the annual budget. What I would say is the interesting point that people might want to reflect on is on page 31, item 1.2, which is the additional costs that we've had as a result of COVID and other related expenses. And people may wish to reflect upon that. But other than that, I have nothing further to add with regards to the recommendations that have been made, which is to note the General Fund, HRI and Collection Fund financial performance for this quarter as set out in Part B of the report.
Thank you, Steve. Can I ask if there are any questions with regard to the financial performance? There appear to be none, and as you rightly suggest, that this is going to be covered, I think, again under the next item, which is the General Fund budget for 2021-22. So we're asked, in terms of recommendations, to note the achievements and progress against corporate plan priorities for 2021, as set out in Part A of the report, and to note the General Fund, HRA, and Collection Fund financial performance for the quarter as set out in Part B of the report. Could I have your agreement to those recommendations, please?
Agreed.
Thank you. And we move to the General Fund budget for 2021 to 22 and the capital programme. Now, as I said at the outset, I'm going to exclude in terms of this report for the first, for purpose of debate and voting, the reference to the aspiration homes, and so please can I ask people to refrain from referring to that during the debate, and once we've taken the vote on everything but that, both Alan Shuttleworth and myself will leave the meeting and leave Steve Holt to handle any discussion in that area and the vote upon it. But Steve, can I ask you to introduce the budget as set out and invite any officers in that you wish.
Yes, thank you very much, David. And yet again, sorry, Councillor Steve Holt, Finance Portfolio Holder. To sort of lay out the scene, if you like, Cabinet is asked to recommend certainly the first 5 proposals, which is Part 1, which is the General Fund budget for 2021 and 2022. 2020-21 revised and 2021-2022 original. The capital programme and financing, an increase in council tax at Eastbourne Borough Council of 2%, the revised general fund capital programme, and also to note the section 151 officers sign off as outlined in the report. As we've heard over the last year, COVID's been exceptionally difficult for many, certainly across councils and indeed ourselves. It's no exceptions to that, I'm afraid, but of course it's been very devastating for the wider community and is something that we're constantly reflecting on, and as we've already done, I pay tribute to all the officers for the outstanding work, frankly, that they've been doing over the last 12 months plus to help protect our town and the most vulnerable, but also of course to the wider community for the way they've stepped up. It's been a true tribute to the town and the way it worked, so my thanks to them all. In terms of our council and our financial position, if you like, there's a couple of items I wish to highlight for Cabinet and for anybody else overhearing. Section 2.1 does detail in quite some detail. I'm really grateful to Homer and the team, the financial impact of COVID-19. One of the things that I found particularly noticeable is the £3.7 million in additional costs, which are forecasted for 2020 to 2021, and that includes homelessness prevention, redeployment costs, support for leisure services, additional PPE, community grants, and cleaning costs. If you read the report, I've deliberately excluded there the unachieved savings, because actually this authority has done an outstanding job over the last year of identifying the savings that we needed to make and that we committed to make this time last year as part of our finances. Those of you who have long memories and remember my speech last year, I outlined that we needed to make £6.4 million worth of savings or income targets. And As part of the support that we've received from the government, we have had perhaps the most forensic analysis of our accounts that we have ever had, and indeed of our plans, and indeed of our recovery, including from the LGA peer group, independent assessors, MHCLG, and I dare say even the Secretary of State has flicked through the papers to make sure he's happy with the recommendations they've made. And through that, what was identified is even through COVID, and we've heard of the challenges through the performance reviews and everything else, even through COVID, we achieved 75% of those savings, which is around 4.9%. I am incredibly proud of our council for doing that, because that is no small achievement, and it's something that, again, I think we need to really reflect on. And it's part of the overall picture of the fact that we are in the situation we're in, not because of anything we've done, but because of the unusualness and the exceptional circumstances of COVID, which is why the government support is there. What I would reflect upon as well is the fact that 60% of our income is derived from the tourism sector and the tourism opportunities of this authority, including £6 million from theatres and conferences, which of course closed pretty much overnight and haven't been able to reopen, certainly in any way that we would have expected, again, even this time last year. I mentioned council tax, and of course we are increasing council tax this year by 2%. That reflects about less than 10p a week in terms of the council tax increase. And that really, to me, compares quite favourably, perhaps, to the East Sussex County Council's increase, which is £52 and 2p a year, and is something that again, I wish to highlight. Again, in terms of government grant and support, not to beat around the bush with this, but we received about £1.8 million in terms of grants and support from the government in COVID. And East Sussex County Council have received 32 million. Obviously, the news this week of the Capitalisation Office has been encouraging, and I want to really pay tribute here to Hamira, the Chief Finance Officer, of course, Rob, our CEO, and others, including those that I've mentioned earlier on, the LGA, for their support, the independent auditors who looked at everything, and frankly, the huge team behind the very small but very dedicated and committed team in the finance department who have worked pretty much flat out to give in a timely response in a timely way the details and the reports that MHCLG have asked. This hasn't been easy, and those negotiations are, to be frank, continuing. And we do have a concern, and I hope people won't mind me mentioning it because it's by no means meant to be an attack, but we do have a concern that there is a considerable cost to this for this authority of that Capitalisation Officer. And so at this stage, we are urging the Secretary of State to reconsider some of the conditions that they're laying out to ensure that there's best value for all. And again, I want to thank Caroline Ansell for her support in helping us achieve the Capitalisation Office, and I'm sure her continued support for this authority. Moving on to capital, again, very briefly and broadly speaking, really the whole remit of this authority over the coming year or so will be post-COVID stabilisation, as it will be for pretty much every single authority across the UK, if not all, and indeed probably across the world. And indeed most businesses. And again, I would say pretty much every business has been affected and impacted, and what any business right now would be doing is looking at what their capital and what their future expenses are and how they can best address them. Broadly speaking, to stabilise post-COVID, our capital projects will focus on those areas that either receive grant funding, that we have a contractual obligation for, that there's a health and safety requirement, and if not acting, will result in a loss of income for Eastbourne Borough Council. I will talk later on about the housing revenues account. It's a separate report, but it talks in detail about housing. Of course, we are still committed to building housing and creating new homes, not just because it's something that we're very passionate about, but actually doing so reduces the overall cost of some of those pressure points that we have, including homelessness and on housing. I'm going to stop there, as I think I'm asked to do so, and ask for any questions, and also ask Homera if there's anything I've missed as part of that presentation. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Steve. Homera, is there anything you'd like to add to what Steve said already?
Good evening. Thanks, Councillor Hort. Thank you, Councillor Thott. Nothing further. I'm just mindful that there has been a very wide-ranging consultation on this paper. There's been numerous briefings throughout this process. And the very latest consultation was when we took the report to the Scrutiny Committee for their consideration. And having considered the report, they have asked for an additional recommendation. They have asked for Cabinet to consider a recommendation from this scrutiny, and that is some. I'm just going to read it out. That Cabinet accepts the offer of support from Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government. I just thought I also raise that at this point, but nothing further from me. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Homera, and can I add my thanks to yourself and your team for the work that you've done on this, not just in terms of preparing the budget, but throughout the year and the engagement that has taken place with the MHCLG through that period, the amount of information you've provided to them, the questions that you've answered in response to the questions you've answered in response to their engagement with us. I was cognizant of the request from Scrutiny. I'd like to thank Scrutiny for that. I've got to say that when the MHCLG wrote to me, which was on Tuesday of last week, they provided a deadline which they'd asked for a response as to whether or not we would accept that offer of the 9th of February, which was of course yesterday. And so I must tell you that I have on your behalf accepted that. If you think that I've got that wrong, now's the time to sack me. But I believe that that was the right way forward. And so I've already written to Local, the relevant minister, accepting the offer that they've made to us. As Steve has said, we're grateful to them for that support. What is happening here, just for people who may be listening in on the call and think, well, what does that actually mean? The government haven't actually given us any additional money, which would have been nice, but they have given us the permission to borrow in order to make up for the loss of income from the services such as theatres, bandstand and others, Sovereign Centre, that were closed down, but we still had the overheads to carry during the lockdown period. This has been an exceptional year. And so that's what we will be doing going forward. And indeed, of course, it's exactly the same as the government are doing themselves. They've incurred a lot of additional costs. They've lost a lot of income. And as a nation, we are borrowing to meet that debt. We will all have that to repay at some stage. But the pandemic's not something that any of us could have foreseen. And it's something that needed to be dealt with. And as a country and as a town, we are dealing with it. So thank you. John.
Thanks, David. I was just going to comment on the fact that I see this very similarly to the government support to businesses, as Steve obviously mentioned. The government's brought in CBILS loans and support and so forth, and I think it's the same here. I think it's morally incumbent on the government to support local authorities who are delivering frontline services, and I think that also on the basis that we have to become ever so much more entrepreneurial as government grants reduce, we are effectively running those businesses like the Devonshire Park and conference facilities and tennis every year and so on. And when those things get cancelled through no fault of anybody's, through an international pandemic, the support there is the same for local authorities as it is for local businesses, and we need to demonstrate, as a business would do, that we're a viable machine. And once the economy starts picking up, we'll be back on track, and we'll better repay the loan and get back on our feet and be self-sufficient. So it was really just to align that comparison between the CBILS loan to businesses and this support from the MHCLG to local authorities, which I think is welcomed. It'd been nice if it was perhaps mix and match between not all repayable. Bear in mind we are providing services to the community, but we are where we are, and we'll get through this and make the changes necessary and repay the money and get back on our feet.
Sorry, Dave, you're on mute.
Sorry, I said thank you very much, John. And then I called Becky. I'll get used to this one day.
Thank you, Councillor Tutt. I was a bit slow there off the mark as well. But I wanted to say that having, you know, all the work that you put in, Councillor Holt, Councillor Tutt, Himira and your team to try and obtain this this deal with MHCLG has been incredible. I know, you know, finance isn't the easiest thing. Perhaps for Himira it is, but it's certainly not for me. I know Councillor Holt's very good at it as well, but rather you than me. And I know that you've worked flat out to obtain this. If you hadn't have worked so hard and answered all those questions, we would probably be in a much worse position. And having obtained this deal, and now we're looking to the future, I think things are going to be bright for the future. They're brighter than I thought they would be, and I'm really positive that we will come out of this fighting and that we will be in a very strong position in a few years.
Thank you, Becky. Steve.
Yes, thank you, David. Again, Councillor Steve Holt, Finance Portfolio Holder. Thank you, Becky, and thank you, John, as well. I think you're right in terms of looking at it like normal business support. I mean, I think Sibbles and Bibbles, to be honest with you, is probably a little bit more favourable terms than we've got, personally speaking. But hey, we're in where we're at, and I know officers are currently talking about that at the moment. One of the things I know that everybody on Cabinet and indeed the Council are aware of, and again, I welcome the support of others within the Council and indeed the wider community, is the fact that there will be some really difficult decisions that we have to make as an authority going ahead. And we've already sort of reflected upon that perhaps as part of recovery and reset. And I know that I believe, and apologies, that Rob might give us just a quick overview as to what those things may be and the things that the Council and the officers have sort of been working on and exploring and sort of developments in terms of those savings going ahead and forwards.
Thank you, Steve. I'll bring our Chief Executive, Rob Cottrell, in now to give us that reassurance.
Thank you, Chair. Rob Cottrell, Chief Exec. And as Steve and others have said, you know, officers and members have been working continuously throughout the year, looking to revise service delivery and deliver savings. And I know that CMT and Cabinet members have been doing that continuously, not just in the context of the challenges that we face, but also in the context of the government grants, income recovery grant, and also the capitalisation to which you've recently referred. And we've had to strike a really tricky balance between making the Council financially sustainable for the long term, but also minimising the impact of any changes on our residents, communities and businesses who need support now more than most times. So just really to go through some of the key areas that we'll be implementing. As Steve's already referred to, we've had a review of our capital programme. Clearly, a number of the schemes in there will want to be respected in the context of a post-COVID world, and also our capacity to deliver it has been influenced throughout the pandemic. There'll be significant savings in that over the next few years, and that will also reduce the capital financing cost by between £1.5 million eventually. We've also worked with colleagues in terms of supporting voluntary redundancy, and that will save £500,000 next year. And in addition to that, we've made significant changes in corporate management team. There was departure of 2 colleagues last year. Our members and some others may know that our trusted and admired colleague, Phil Evans, has decided to look at other opportunities from April this year, and we wish him well in that. And of course, Phil was instrumental in supporting the change in Devonshire Park. We had to make an unfortunately necessary restructuring there, where we managed to save £1.13 million worth of cost in the year. And in service delivery, we are currently undergoing a consultation exercise for restructuring, where we'll deliver £450,000 worth of savings next year. I'm pleased to inform members that the initial response to that consultation has been very positive. Reduced property overheads, for example, exiting Mongrove Road will save £300,000. And also in terms of council assets, you'll be aware as that we're in contact with other public agencies, and we have 2 mass vaccination centres, which not only provide a fantastic service to communities, but also gaining income from the council. There are other items on this agenda which will also alter the financial profile, but in terms of contracts, we're looking to save £100,000, revising our events programme, further savings there, and also, as mentioned in the report, a review of small grants with a one-off saving for next year, but with the important caveat that we're not stopping funding for any organisation that's expecting or has been previously approved. So I think, members, I think this provides the right balance between those savings, but also supporting our community. And now back over to you, Chair.
Thank you, Rob, and thank you for taking us through that tour of the things that we are doing. As both you and Steve have said, there's been some difficult decisions here, but that's a consequence of a pandemic, and we need to make sure that we've got the right balance in terms of providing services and looking at the public purse and making sure that we've got a stable platform going forward. So I have no hesitation in asking you to agree the recommendations as set out in the report, numbers 1 to 5. In other words, the general fund budget for 2021, the capital programme and financing for 20 to 21, the increase in the council tax for Eastbourne Borough Council of 2%, resulting in a Band D charge of £256.74 in 2021. The revised General Fund Capital Programme for 2021 as set out in Appendix 3, and to note the Section 151 officer sign-off as outlined in the report. Can I ask you for your approval to those recommendations, please?
Agreed.
Thank you. I'm now going to ask Steve to take over the chair for item 6, which relates to aspiration homes. And if you could give both myself and Alan a second to leave the room, but ask him also, once the vote is taken, or somebody, just to send us a text to let us come back. Thank you.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Again, Councillor Steve Holt, portfolio holder for finance. I've been hearing that once or twice tonight, I'm afraid, everybody. So members are asked, as part of item 6, to delegate authority of the Chief Finance Officer in consultation with the lead member of finance to approve the making of all future loans to Aspiration Homes LLP and all drawdowns under both future and existing facilities. 2, approve the loans as a restricted matter under the LLP agreement with Lewes District Council. 3, approve all documentation required to ensure compliance with the UK's new subsidy control regime, and so that right to buy receipts are appropriated in accordance with all relevant requirements. And 4, determine the terms of all agreements and associated documentation required to put into effect these delegations, and to authorise the execution of all such documentation on behalf of the council. Any questions? Anything anybody wishes to raise, or can we just vote and say agreed or not? I'm not seeing any hands go up, so are we agreed with the recommendations?
Agreed.
Lovely, thank you. We can we invite Simon and David back?
No.
Oh, sorry, Alan and David back.
Thank you. Just wait for Alan to come back as well.
Thank you, Ben.
And you're back. Good. And thank you, John, for texting me. We're both back. Right, on to the next item on the agenda. Item 10 is Treasury Management and Prudential Indicators for 2021, Capital Strategy and Investment Strategy. Steve, please.
Thank you once again, Chair. It's Councillor Steve Holt, Finance, sorry. So the report details the Treasury Management and Investment Strategy in accordance to SIPFA's Treasury Management Code of Practice. This is the management of our temporary cash balances and long-term debt borrowed to fund capital projects. The Council will continue to regularly review the position of its long-term borrowing requirement, its affordability and the capital financing costs impact on our revenue budget. The Council's borrowing position as at the end of 2020-2021 is expected to be around 160 million, with expected new borrowing of 19 million in 2021-22. Borrowing will only be undertaken for temporary liquidity or to fund the capital programme and will only be undertaken when unavoidable. The Treasury recently published details of a new Public Works Loan Board lending terms, reducing rates by 1% from the 26th of November 2020, but also confirming, and this is an important change, it will not lend to any council that plans to buy investment property primarily for a yield anywhere within their capital plans. The council will therefore no longer seek to purchase investment properties primarily for the return they provide. Non-housing related borrowing represents long-term investment in Eastbourne's assets and regeneration, including investments intended to bring financial benefit to the town and council. I should note as well that housing borrowing allows us to reduce some of the overhead in terms of homelessness. Investment returns are likely to be exceptionally low during 2021-22, with little increase in the following 2 years. Bank rate is unlikely to raise from 0.10 for a considerable period. It is very difficult to say when it may start rising, so it may be best to assume that investment earnings from money market related instruments will be negative or sub 0.50 for the foreseeable future. This Council Capital Strategy report gives a high-level overview of how capital expenditure, capital financing and treasury management activity contribute to the provision of local services in Eastbourne Borough Council, along with an overview of how associated risk is managed and the implications for future financial sustainability. My thank you to Ola for providing me with some notes so that I can sort of be clear in what we're asking you to pass. Thank you, Ola.
Thank you. Can I ask if there are any questions on Treasury Management? It may seem a rather dry subject, but it's actually a very important subject because getting Treasury Management right can save us from having to make some tough decisions in other places. And it is about the way that we borrow, it's the way that we invest, and it's the way that we react to changes in the market in a timely manner to take the right moments in time to make changes. And we thank our officers for the advice they give us on that. And our track record as our council has been extremely good in this respect. So I have very great confidence in asking you to agree the recommendations that Steve has just put to us. Can I have your approval to that, please?
Agreed.
Thank you all very much. And we now move on. We're still in the finances. This is very much your show today, Steve. So I'll ask you to introduce yourself once more as we talk about the housing revenue account and the rent setting for 2021-22, and also the HRA, the housing revenue account capital programme between 2020 and 2024.
Yes, thank you, Chair, Councillor Steve Holt, for those keeping track. So the HRR budget and rent setting report that you have, the Cabinet will recall that this time last year we were presented with this report alongside a 30-year business plan which sets out the outcome of a thorough review which had taken place and an update to the business plan that allowed some cost additions, including an enhanced service provision and a 500k allocation for sustainability initiatives, owing to HRA rates beginning to increase again after 4 years of reductions. The plan also included provision for an ambitious capital programme into the future, namely the development of Bedford Well Road site in the early years and 22 acquisitions and 47 builds each year starting 2023-24, owing to the lifting of the HRA debt cap. There is little variance between the estimated net operating surplus shown in the original budget set for 2021 and the 2020-2021 revised net operating surplus. It has increased, the revised net operating surplus has increased by 235k. The main difference is that loan charges are now expected to be less by 374k, and this is because the capital programme has been recast and interest rates are expected to be lower on new borrowing. This is a really good report, and there's lots of good stuff that's mentioned. And I know housing for many of us is a really crucial area, and I know I've mentioned it once or twice already tonight. The reason it is for a number of reasons, and again, I think it's fantastic that we're investing in building homes and new homes, particularly right now, and also because the financial benefits of this is also obvious in the sense that it provides us with rental and income, but also it allows us to place people in decent family homes and decent supported family homes at times. And sometimes, certainly when we look at things like homelessness and temporary accommodation, it is far better to place somebody in accommodation that is sustainable and long term. And anything we can do to tackle the homelessness problem and temporary placements and to reduce the housing list is only to our credit and only provides both financial and social improvements for our town and our residents. So again, I would just ask you to all approve the recommendations that are laid out is section agenda item 11. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Steve. Comments on that report? Questions? Alan, were you? Yes, I thought you were. You're on mute.
Yeah. Only just to endorse what Councillor Holt has said. I mean, two of the important strands of this report are the continuing commitment to an ambitious programme of affordable house building in Eastbourne, alongside our acquisitions policy on properties, for the reasons that Stephen said. We do really need to drive that forward to, as a key part of our policy of trying to ensure that those people who desperately need affordable housing have that opportunity from Eastbourne Borough Council. The other area that's touched on in the report, which he mentioned, was our commitment to the carbon neutral 2030 campaign. And as part of that, obviously housing plays a key part in that, and we have put a significant sum of money again into investing in initiatives around carbon neutrality, and there is other work going on linked to that, work alongside other local authorities to look at the science, and indeed to work with the universities to look at the science behind carbon neutrality. So that those are two key strands in what we're doing going forward, and we remain as committed to those two key areas as we were before the pandemic, and we remain committed to driving those two initiatives forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? I mean, I'm grateful to you both for drawing attention to the importance of housing. It really is a serious issue, not just here in Eastbourne, but across the country. When I think back to the time where I first took out a mortgage for a property, I think that the average property price was about 3 times the average salary. Now it's about 12 times the average salary here in Eastbourne, and how young people get that first step on the ladder must be extremely difficult. So all that we can do to continue to help ease that burden, the better. Can I ask for your approval to the recommendations, please?
Agreed.
Thank you. And we move on in the agenda yet again, this time to the Eastbourne and Lewis Community Safety Partnerships Annual Report. And I'll ask Becky to introduce this to us, please, Becky.
Hello, Councillor Whippy, lead for community safety here. Agenda item 12, it's a good report. It's been consistently good this year. There has been progress in nearly every area. Of course, it's been affected by COVID. But if I can just take you to
You're muted for a second, Becky. Don't know what you did there.
Sorry, I leant on my laptop trying to turn the pages. On page 69, you'll see a breakdown of how the money has been spent. So there was £7,500 safe from harm, domestic homicide reviews, which I think have been very important given that we've all been in lockdown, and there's been a big concern that there would be a rise in domestic violence. The White Ribbon campaign, mediation, conflict resolution services, cuckooing protection because of county lines. Eastbourne Neighbourhood Watch have been given money, Eastbourne Youth Radio, Community Speed Watch, Restoring Eastbourne, Eastbourne Hoteliers Association, and Homes First and Sussex Police for doorbells, and those are doorbells where you've got a little video on them. The remaining funds in the coffers are £10,000, and I think Oliver's actually having a look at a bid to try and make sure that all of that budget is spent. I mean, we've been victims of COVID very much. There's been a rise of 8% on the previous year. When you look at ASB incidents, domestic abuse has risen by 8% this year, whilst reports of antisocial behaviour fell by 6%. And I think that that's more to do with the fact that we've had the lockdown several times this year. We're still a relatively low crime area, so we're pretty pleased about that. And when you look at the if you have a look at the priorities on page 62 that we have 5 priorities that we've been addressing this year. So that's to address antisocial behaviour, to tackle the incidents of hate crime, domestic and sexual abuse, reduce the incidence of serious violence and knife crime, support the street community and address ASB, reduce the incidence of antisocial driving on our roads. And I do believe that given the circumstances, this has actually been done as well as it possibly could. I don't know if Oliver would like to speak on this because it's very much his baby. I don't know if Oliver's prepared anything. Oliver Jones.
Hello, Oliver.
Thank you, Councillor Whippy. Thank you, Chair. Oliver Jones, Strategy and Partnership Lead for covering community safety and housing. That was a really comprehensive run through from Councillor Whippy. I think the only few bits that I would add is that we've tried to shift the priority of the partnership this year to meet some of the challenges of the pandemic. Councillor Whippy noted the increase in antisocial behaviour reports during lockdown. We've invested in some additional mediation services for our private tenants to cover some of the issues that have been happening there. Been working really closely with the police on Operation Blitz across the town, which is their operation that targets antisocial behaviour each year. And it's really all the projects that you see funded and worked with there are all about partnership. Partnership really is the key word, and we'll continue to do that. As Councillor Whippy mentioned, it's been quite tough to fund some of the youth diversionary schemes that we would normally do, which is where the underspend is in this year's budget. But I'm actively working with agencies such as the YMCA and Wave Leisure and others to see how we can fund schemes as we all hope the world opens up again in the spring. Thank you.
Thank you, Oliver. Are there any questions or comments people wish to make? Steve.
Good evening once again, David. Steve Holt. I just thought I haven't spoken enough tonight, so I thought I'd just throw some more commentary in. No, this is something that's really close to my heart, and I know it's close to everybody on cabinets similarly as well. I mean, I wanted to praise and thank Oliver and the team for the excellent work you're doing, particularly with the secure redoubts. Obviously, as a Devonshire Ward councillor, to see that level of investment and spending in terms of preventing inquisitive crime is really fantastic. So my thanks to you, to Adam Godden, to the EHA and your partners, including, of course, the Police Crime Commissioner, for their support with that. I know it's a very tight timescale to spend the money, but I'm already seeing some of the Facebook commercials for businesses and for residents to get involved, and I know it's being really warmly received. So my heartfelt thanks to you for everything you're doing there. The only other thing I wanted to reflect upon, because it's really important, I know everybody here agrees, that we keep the pressure up on our colleagues, our neighbouring partners over perhaps at Brighton and Hove City Council. And their decisions and their current placements of homeless people from their town into our own. I know that's putting a huge strain on our services and our partners, and indeed our Ross Leaving initiatives. I'm pleased to see that the issue has been raised once again. within the local press, through the Eastbourne Herald, and indeed through other partners that are interested. And I know Tim Whelan is doing a lot of work on this. But I'm also really appreciative of the cross-party support that we've achieved on this, and Caroline's submission to Boris Johnson this afternoon at PMQs, as well as indeed the decision of scrutiny this week to take this to a scrutiny public meeting in a couple of weeks' time. I do hope, or within time, I know we've invited Brighton and Hove to attend. My hope is that if they choose not to, I really hope they will engage positively in the experience. But I would also say that if they choose not to, we should continue to press ahead and investigate, and then continue to raise that pressure on them. But I do hope that they will engage positively in the process. But I also know that Councillor Shuttleworth's looking at this as a motion to full council in 2 weeks' time as well. It's a really important issue for a number of residents in Devonshire, but indeed along the seafront as well. We are a tourist town, and we need to ensure that people, when they come to Eastbourne, feel safe, because it is a safe town and it's a lovely town, but it's so important that perception of public safety is there. And the attitudes and behaviour of Brighton and Hove City Council, to be honest with you, quite frankly, are somewhat lacking. And I'm concerned of the lack of response perhaps that they've given to our authority, to our letters and various emails that we've been sending. But hopefully they will start to engage with us more positively going forward.
Thank you, Steve. Don't see any other hands. On that final point that you mentioned there about a notice of motion at a meeting earlier this afternoon on a different topic, that was discussed, and I understand that has cross-party support, and so we can discuss the wording of that with the leader of the opposition, and hopefully we'll have that moved by Liberal Democrats, seconded by the Conservatives, and a unanimous vote in council. Alan.
Well, only to reinforce what you said, as Councillor Holt says, I've already put a motion forward, which hopefully will be shared with all members of the council, because I know there is support across the council for the effect of all these placements. Our concern is, in part, it's for the individuals who are actually being moved from their support services within Brighton and placed in the next town along without those support services on hand, and obviously many vulnerable people who've been put in that position. But there have been representations from just about everybody to Brighton City Council now over a significant length of time, and very little response. So I confirm that we will be having a debate at our next council, but before that, between now and then, we will continue to put pressure on Brighton to change their policy and actually return those people back to Brighton, where their support services are, because there's an enormous amount of pressure on our own Rough Sleeper Initiative project in Eastbourne, and indeed on all the organisations, including voluntary organisations who are working to help people in temporary accommodation, and indeed former home rough sleepers. A lot of pressure, and it really is not acceptable for Brighton to continue this policy. So we will obviously continue to work in conjunction with all the different organisations in the town who share that sense that we need to get something done.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands. Coming back to what both Oliver and Becky said about the work that the Community Safety Partnership do, this really is about partnership. It's about us working with statutory bodies such as police, with business organisations, and with the voluntary groups and the community in order to deliver a programme around community safety. And that's something that Eastbourne has always done really well. It's about coming together rather than one organisation seeing things as their sole responsibility and trying to dictate to others. It's about groups coming together and sharing the challenges that we face as a town and finding solutions to those challenges. So thank you, Becky, for the report. We're asked to in the recommendation to note the achievements and the activities of the partnership, and I'm sure that we're all happy to do so. Just look for confirmation of that before moving on to the final item on the agenda, which comes in two parts. It's the adaptations to the waste collection service, of which there's been a high level of consultation. It's a report that comes in two names. It comes under Colin Swansborough and Jonathan Dale, because Colin has the portfolio for place services, but Jonathan for climate change, which is one of the will be one of the beneficiaries of change under this. So I'm going to leave it to you, gentlemen, to decide who would like to go first.
Well, I think I'd like to go first, please.
You've got the gig, Colin.
Okay, yeah, it's a good report, this one. The proposal is, as I suppose everybody knows, that we are going to we're wishing to move to alternate weekly refuse and recycling collections. There's lots and lots of good reasons for this. We went out to consultation over it, and we had a large response from people, but I think most people in the town are quite happy with the way in which it's anticipated it will run, and it should run quite well, because we have neighbours. Wealdon District Council, for example, have been doing this for years. And if you talk to their residents and their councillors, they have no problem with it at all. So I'm very confident on that basis. The other reason for my confidence is if anybody has any problems with it, the waste service that we have has a great track record for listening to people and following up on their problems and complaints and so on. So I think if there are any problems arising early in April, I know we're going to flood the phone calls, the phone service now, but please get in touch with us and we'll sort out whatever problems that we have. As I said, on the survey that we had 1,500 replies to that, and I heard Scrutiny, Bryn Navy on Monday gave a long discourse about how it all shaped up. So I'm very pleased that people are taking that much interest. And one thing is, it saves us £200,000 a year, it's anticipated, which is not to be sneezed at in these day and age. Okay, I'll leave the rest to John.
Thank you. Just before I bring John in, I mentioned this in two parts. Please can I ask you to avoid discussion around the business case, because that is in the confidential because of the commercial sensitivity, and we'll take that after exclusion of the public. But John, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, David. Thanks, Colin. I mean, the main driver for this is to increase our recycling rates as a town, and we sit at about 35% at the moment. The government target is 50%, and we are behind where we need to be when compared to our neighbours, for example, as well as like-for-like authorities like Cheltenham. So the driver for this was to increase our recycling. Excuse me. At the moment, if you look at 1.2 in the report, nearly 60% of local authorities already collect refuse fortnightly. So we're in the minority, where 32% still collect weekly, and so that is really of real importance in this. A good point to mention is, as Colin has said, about the responses we had, 1,578, was the highest response rates of any council-run consultation in recent years. And it just goes to show, in the same way you can reflect on the whole estate plan when we went out to consultation with that, again, we had significant resident engagement. I think it's really encouraging to see that the residents are getting behind the green initiatives and the focus we have on improving our environment and reducing our carbon footprint by engaging with these consultation processes, which I think, for me, is a real highlight. I'd just like to comment on 4.4, where it says, when asked how important do you think it is to recycle, just under 85% stated they considered it to be very important. So just to bear that in mind, that the residents are seeing this as a really important part of the service that we deliver. There are some cost savings which obviously are beneficial, but the most important thing for me, other than increasing recycling rates, is the reduction in our carbon footprint. And in 6.5, you can see that we're reducing, or the anticipated reduction is about 60,000 kilograms of CO2 equivalent by reducing the mileage that our trucks will be doing, which represents around 15% of the emissions from the entire fleet, which I think is a substantial saving at a time where we have a carbon neutral 2030 target to hit. There are some appendices which obviously give some really clear information about the whole process through the consultation, and as a result of some of the mitigations that we will need to put in place to support areas that need support. And as Margaret mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, there are in Appendix 1 areas where they're likely to remain on weekly collections where there's a high density of housing and not enough space perhaps to store 2 bins or whatever. So it's important that those are maintained. I think that's probably all I'm going to say on the report, because it's fairly detailed, but it's equally been a fairly open, transparent process that's been going on for some time. I mean, the consultation process on its own was 12 weeks. I just wanted to mention from the scrutiny panel that they went through, they commented quite rightly on an easy read documentation and communications going out, which we already have an easy read policy, but I absolutely take the point that that is more of a reactionary service than proactive. And so I've spoken to Bryn today, and that will be very much a proactive easy read to ensure that those communications go out well in advance, to ensure that by the time the service starts in April, residents are well informed of what the service then looks like, and any effect it might then have on them. Just wanted to mention a couple of other things. One of the highlights of bringing the waste service in-house is obviously we're then able to work with the team very, very efficiently to move this service to alternate weekly whilst all working within the same values and the same work ethics and so on. And I think that's a tribute to Sean and his team at Cecil, that they've managed to adapt and set the plan and strategy ahead to ensure that we'll deliver this seamlessly. I also wanted to say thank you to the officers that put a lot of work into it. Jane Goodall particularly, as always, an absolutely outstanding officer and brilliant to work with. And so I'm very grateful to her for all her efforts. And there are many, and I'm sure that whenever you mention one, you always run the risk of missing somebody out. But I'm very grateful to the team that we work with here. They are absolutely committed to the environment and reducing our carbon footprint and improving services. And at the same time, as Colin mentioned, there is a reduction in cost at a time where that could never be so any more important than it is today. So I'm very pleased to present this report. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And thank you for the work you're doing with EcoAction and others in order to address that 2030 carbon neutrality target that we've set in Eastbourne. I'm sure that with, again, partnership working across the town, we'll get there. Becky.
Just to pick up on the easy read element of this, Councillor Dale. I know that was brought forward at scrutiny by Councillor Freebody. He's very passionate, as I am, about disability, and so is Bryn. And we've already had an email together, and that's already been actioned. And you know, I'm very lucky because my role when it comes to disability has a lot of cross-party support, and so you know, it's something that's never contentious. In putting a disability champion on cabinet, this is what Councillor Tutt always intended. And so, hopefully we will get better at these things, but we're, it's still a very new position. And I think the only way is, is forward with this. And yeah, so just to let you know, it's already been done.
Thank you very much, Becky. Thank you for that assurance. And that easy read is part of our policy on things going forward as well, not just for this particular issue. Steve.
I promise I won't talk on every topic, but I think we're running out of things to talk about, aren't we? So,
I think you've achieved it, actually, Steve.
I think we're close there, aren't we? Yeah, Councillor Steve Holt. I just wanted to thank both John and Colin for your work with this. I know it's been something that you've been both personally very much involved in, very heavily involved in, and in responding to some of the concerns expressed by residents and others to the changes that are proposed. As somebody who used to live in the Wilden area in Polegate, just over the border, I've got to say that they had alternative weekly collections for years, and I think, like always, there were concerns that to be fair, residents have expressed in the consultation as part of the consultation, but they're very rarely, if ever, actually materialise. I think it's something that I've been very much satisfied with and pleased about is the very proactive way that we've gone out and tried to sort of calm those fears or calm that alarmistness perhaps about it. I think it's really mature of us to actually say, yeah, no, we understand, but actually this has been going on for a while now. Some of our neighbours do it. Most, as you said, do it at present, and therefore, some of those concerns you have are understandable. But let's explain why they might not be realistic, or why they might not happen. But also what we're doing to make sure that we don't. And I know the work that Sean and that Tim and others within CSIL have done has really cleared that up. And I've got absolutely every confidence that this will be absolutely an improvement, if you like, if anything, to the services because of the carbon sort of benefits that it brings. So my thanks to officers and indeed councillors for the involvement in this.
Thank you, Steve. And that comment there about others who moved along this route before us reminds me of a discussion I was having with the leader of a Conservative council not so very long ago, and I said to him we were going through a consultation exercise with the potential of moving to bi-weekly collections, and he said, bi-weekly collections? He said, we did that ages ago. We're just about to move to 3 weekly collections of residual waste. So perhaps we're behind the curve in this one. But can I ask everybody for their approval to the recommendation, subject to anything you may want to pick up on the business case, the detail, which we'll take in confidential session after we move the exclusion of the public.
Agreed.
Is that agreed? Thank you. And with that, I would propose that the exclusion of the public on the basis of the commercial sensitivity of the last element of that report. And so I'd ask you just to maintain radio silence for 30 seconds until IT tell us that the public streaming has been completed.